The Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, as notified to the Business Committee, I move that the sitting of the House on Wednesday the 2nd of November 2016 be extended from 9 a.m. on Thursday the 3rd of November 2016 for the third reading of the Agricultural Compounds and Veterinary Medicines Amendment Bill, the second reading of the Geographical Indications Wine and Spirits Registration Amendment Bill, the second reading of the Wildlife Powers Amendment Bill and the committee stage of the Statutes Amendment Bill.
The question is that that motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Speaker.
Point of order, Grant Robertson.
Mr Speaker, I just want to make a comment, and I hope you will allow me to do this, around the ruling that you've made about the oral questions roster. Mr Speaker, obviously you have the right to make the rulings that you do, but the Labour Party wants to register its strong concern with the ruling that you've made that allows a member of the executive to continue to be counted in the calculation of the number of oral questions available to the government. It doesn't matter who that particular member is. It's about the position that they hold within the executive. McGee is quite clear, Mr Speaker, for the purpose of questions, members who hold executive office, ministers, associate ministers and parliamentary undersecretaries are excluded from the calculation of the number of questions available to government parties. This is clearly not about just the National Party, it is about all parties in the government. I think in your ruling, Mr Speaker, you acknowledge the fact that actually under the rules and guidance that this parliament operates under, members of the executive should not be counted. Just because we have begun operating under a process that has proved to be incorrect does not mean we should continue to do so. And the Labour Party strongly believes members of the executive should not be counted, and we should not go ahead with a process that we all know to be wrong.
I'll hear from the Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Well, firstly, Mr Speaker, I want to recognise, as Mr Robertson has, this is your decision, and I would say the correct one, given that, well, we are now 20 years into MMP, and there have been a number of evolutions over the last 20 years that have come as a result of arrangements that parties make around MMP. And I'd make the point that during his time as Clerk of this House, McGee himself not only presided over but advised on a number of changes to standing orders that were as a consequence of practice developed by governments in the pursuit of MMP support for the government's position in MMP. So, sir, I think your decision simply continues that evolution, and I'm sure that the Standing Orders Committee will be able to make a determination for the future parliaments that reflects the advice you've given the House today.
Well, I'll hear from David Seymour.
Mr Speaker, I had no intention of commenting on this matter in the House, but since others have put their thoughts on record, I'd just like to record that the position of Undersecretary is an ambiguous one, for instance, being able to enter a private member's bill in the ballot. And the net effect of your decision today is to maintain the size of Parliament relative to the Executive with respect to the allocation of questions. And I think that the Parliament holding the Executive to account is a very important function of this House.
I thank all members for their contributions on this. It is a difficult issue. It was discussed at length at the Business Committee yesterday, and I attempted to drive a decision made by the Business Committee, and my job there is to drive that to near unanimity. That proved more difficult on this occasion than on many others. Whilst I accept with some validity the arguments advanced by Mr Robertson, I don't think it's quite as clear as Mr Robertson is suggesting, and that's why I do request that this matter be absolutely clarified through the review of standing orders so there can be no confusion into the future. For those members who haven't had a chance to see the decision, the Business Committee has in the past allocated questions and at last made a decision back in April of this year, and I've decided, in view of the fact that we couldn't get agreement to change the roster in any way, either to reflect the fact that we have one recent retirement from Labor or this decision around Under-Secretaries being able to ask questions, I've decided that the safest way for me is to stick with a decision which was made by the Business Committee without any difficulty at all back in April. That's the situation that remains until the matter is now then tidied up through the review of standing orders and will come into effect without any confusion for the 52nd Parliament.